We have been trained to believe that the world is computable. On one side of the screen, we see the ideal, a digital dashboard tracking predictive metrics in a sterile environment. But the operational reality is reflexive, contested, and in constant motion. Eventually, the dashboard freezes, while the chaotic environment continues to shift. This failure is structural. The primary failure mode of modern institutions is the systematic destruction of the conditions under which intelligence operates. We have substituted secondary representations for primary contact. This is prediction mode. It assumes you can stand outside a situation, model it, and then execute that model. It is the view from nowhere operationalized, the premise that a decontextualized perspective yields superior knowledge because the representation is easier to scale. But that scaling comes at a cost. The process of compression discards the exact contextual and relational information that matters most. Under genuine uncertainty, relying on tokens rather than lived situations leads to a fatal loss of reality contact. To navigate the world, we have to start with a different premise. The actor is biologically and operationally inseparable from the situation. Intelligence is not a calculation. It is a property of the entire organism-environment system. John Dewey argued that experience is transactional. The organism and the environment do not just interact, they mutually constitute each other. You change the situation, and in doing so, the situation changes you. This framework draws on a convergent tradition of thinkers from varied domains, including modern military strategy, complex ecological psychology, and effectual entrepreneurship. They did not coordinate their efforts. They independently discovered the same physical reality, that knowing is a way of going, not a stock of representations. Intelligence is an enacted, situated practice. It is the ongoing effort required to maintain contact with a world that is always in motion. When you don't know what to do, you cannot rely on a model. You need the action learning loop. This loop is built for the inside of a situation. You act, notice what happened, adjust, and act again. There is no distance between the thought and the deed. The self is not stable across this loop. Your implicit framework, the orientation through which you see the world, is subject to revision at every pass. You are a different actor after each cycle because you have been changed by the situation you are coupled to. This is what Sara Sarasvathy found in expert entrepreneurs. They use effectuation. They don't begin with a fixed goal and search for the means to reach it. They begin with who they are and what they know, then allow their purposes to emerge through a cascade of commitments. In a complex environment, the capacity to change with the situation is the only competence that matters. Any process that freezes your goals or your model is actively harmful. To keep that orientation flexible, we have to recognize the difference between primary and secondary experience. Primary experience is the qualitative, felt encounter with the world. Secondary experience is the conceptual rendering of that encounter, the data, the models, and the narratives. Secondary experience is necessary for coordination, but it becomes pathological when it replaces the primary contact it was meant to represent. This is the map refusing to check back with the territory. Lucy Suchman demonstrated this at Xerox PARC. She showed that expert systems engaged with human users as if through a tiny pinhole. The machine only registered the specific actions that changed its internal state, missing the rich contextual reality of what the humans were actually saying and doing. Because the machine can only see the spheres it was programmed to count, its model of the interaction is catastrophically impoverished. It operates in a closed world, while the humans are operating in an open one. Modern large language models haven't escaped this. They operate within closed worlds of computable tokens. They have no reference to the lived situations from which language draws its meaning. Any system that requires closure to function fundamentally loses contact with reality. Datafication requires a closed world. Living requires an open one. Reality contact does not fail randomly. It erodes through characteristic structural patterns designed into modern hierarchies. We see it in abstraction drift, where actors begin responding to their models rather than the situation. The executive who reads a dashboard instead of watching a user struggle is a victim of organizational design, not just personal oversight. James Scott calls this premature legibility. It is the act of formalizing a situation for distant authorities before it is understood. This process destroys the metis, the practical, situated knowledge that was actually doing the work. When you build on top of these decontextualized abstractions, you get high modernist planning failures. The organization gains control of the data, but it loses competence in the world. Then there is temporal compression. This happens when the action loop accelerates past the point where you can notice what happened. It produces decision velocity without decision validity, pure reaction without reflection. The end state of this compression is the collapse of sense-making. When reality contact is severed under pressure, the result is catastrophe. Scaling through centralized abstraction systematically strips away the exact contextual information an actor needs to survive. If intelligence is situated, then scaling it cannot mean centralizing it. We have to scale through a density of local actors, each maintaining their own reality contact. Douglas Tallamy's model of ecological restoration works this way. Millions of independent landowners make local decisions that are independently worthwhile. There is no central command. The coordination emerges from adjacency and imitation. To function in this meshwork, actors rely on a repertoire of prepared spontaneity. They apply disciplined attention to the situation, drawing on thousands of hours of practice patterns to recombine responses as the environment offers them. This local intelligence also requires tactical invisibility. By operating below the threshold of institutional attention, practitioners preserve the situated knowledge that central authorities would otherwise simplify and destroy. They focus on small wins, probes that generate real facts on the ground and reveal paths that were invisible to the grand strategy. In these environments, coordination is discovered through action. Solidarity emerges after the fact, rather than being organized in advance through predictive models. This leads us to a final constructive principle: design for deliberate incompleteness. This means building systems and tools that are intentionally less finished than the situation requires. We must leave room for local actors to complete the system from their own situated knowledge. Coordination infrastructure must preserve contextual richness. It should carry its own providence and its own ignorance as first-class information, widening the pinhole rather than narrowing it. Generative openness is the only defense against the pathology of the closed world. Systems that demand artificial consistency and perfect control are fragile. They shatter when they encounter the unmapped pebble. Operational intelligence does not require a grand strategy or perfect prediction. It requires the discipline of reality contact and the humility to build tools that tether us to the world as it actually is.